Have you ever noticed how some people talk to their pets the same way they talk to the closest person in their life? Not out of silliness, not out of loneliness, but out of something much deeper, something most people never take the time to understand. Because there's a reason a human can look at a dog or a cat and suddenly feel safe enough to open their heart.
In ways they would never do with another person. There's a reason some people say things like, "You understand me, don't you?" Even though they know no words are coming back. But here's the truth nobody talks about. People don't talk to animals because animals are human. They talk to animals because humans stopped feeling safe. Think about that for a second. When you speak to your pet,
You're not pretending they understand English. You're allowing yourself to feel something the world rarely gives you anymore. A place without judgment, a place without performance, a place where you don't have to act right, explain yourself, or be enough. Animals don't ask you to be interesting.
They don't ask you to be strong. They don't ask you to hide the parts of yourself that feel too heavy for other people. They just sit beside you, like they've been waiting there your whole life. And maybe, just maybe, that tells us more about you than it does about them. Because the truth is, the people who talk to their pets the most are often the ones who feel the deepest.
They're the ones who've been misunderstood, dismissed, or told to stop overthinking more times than they can count. They're the ones who learned, slowly and quietly, that humans listen with their ears, but animals listen with their presence. And presence, that warm, quiet, unconditional presence,
is something our world has forgotten how to give. So when someone talks to their dog after a long day, when they whisper their fears to a cat curled beside them, when they laugh alone in the living room with a creature who can't even speak, they're not being strange. They're revealing a truth. Sometimes the safest place for a heart is next to something that can't break it. But this story goes deeper, much deeper, because the psychology behind this connection is not childish. It's human, very painfully human. And in the next part, we're going to explore the real reasons why talking to your pet feels more healing than talking to most people.
Here's something most people never admit out loud. Humans are exhausting. Not because they're bad, not because they're cruel, but because human interaction is complex, more complex than our brains can handle on a daily basis. When you talk to a person, your mind runs 1,000 silent calculations.
did they misunderstand me? Did I say it wrong? Are they judging me? Will they tell someone else? Do they think I'm weak? You think you're having a conversation, but you're actually managing expectations, tone, timing, facial expressions, memories, fears, boundaries, social rules. It's like trying to breathe underwater. But then you walk through your front door, your dog runs to you with tail wagging, or your cat curls quietly at your feet. And suddenly, everything inside you softens. Why?
Because in that moment, there is no performance, no pressure, no emotional risk. You speak, and they simply exist beside you. And somehow, that feels like the most honest conversation you've had all day. Psychologists have a term for this: emotional safety cues. Humans rarely give them consistently.
Animals give them effortlessly. When you talk to your pet, your nervous system reads. No judgment, no interruption, no comparison, no hidden meaning, no social rules, no consequences. Your body relaxes.
before your words even begin. For people who think deeply, feel deeply,
or have been hurt deeply, this matters more than they'll ever admit. Because some people grew up never having a safe listener. Some learned early that if they spoke honestly, it would be used against them. Some learned that silence was safer than truth. And so they carry their stories quietly until one day, a small, furry creature curls into their lap. And suddenly, the words they've been holding for years finally spill out. Not because the animal understands English, but because the human finally feels safe. That's the real psychology behind it. People talk to pets not to be understood, but to be unburdened. Because animals don't analyze your feelings. They don't challenge your pain.
they don't ask you to justify yourself. They just stay. And staying, in a world that constantly walks away, is a form of love so rare that when we find it, we cling to it. But this connection gets even more fascinating because the way you talk to your pet reveals something profound about the way your heart works.
Have you ever noticed something subtle, almost invisible, that happens when people speak to their pets? Their shoulders loosen, their voice softens, their entire nervous system calms down. It's as if the moment they start talking to that dog or cat, the world becomes less sharp, less heavy, less demanding.
And here's the truth psychology rarely says out loud. Talking to animals isn't childish. It's relief. It's honesty. It's freedom without fear. Because with humans, every word feels like it comes with a weight, a reaction, an expectation, a judgment. You say something wrong, someone gets offended. You open up, someone misunderstands. You try to be honest, someone twists it.
But with animals, there's none of that. No emotional calculations, no overthinking, no what did they mean by that, and absolutely no pressure to be perfect. They just sit beside you, listening in the only way that matters, with presence. Psychologists call it emotional simplicity, the rare kind of connection where your nervous system can finally rest. Not because the animal understands your words, but because they understand you, your tone, your energy, your sadness, your excitement, your silence. And this is where it gets even deeper. For many people, talking to a pet is the first time all day they feel truly safe to express anything. You don't need the right sentences. You don't need emotional armor. You don't need to pretend you're okay. You can just talk, or whisper, or cry, or laugh, or ramble about things that make no sense, and you'll never be judged for it. That's not weakness, that's emotional intelligence. That's knowing exactly where your heart feels the most understood. Because, let's be honest, humans are complicated. Some drain your energy without trying. Some invalidate your feelings. Some listen only to respond, not to understand. And some simply don't have the emotional capacity to hold space for your thoughts. Pets, on the other hand, don't pretend, don't lie, don't manipulate, and don't disappear when things get hard. They love in the simplest, purest, most consistent way possible. So when someone says, I talk to my dog like he's a person, what they really mean is, this is the only place where my heart doesn't feel heavy. And maybe that's why so many people prefer these quiet, wordless conversations, because they're speaking to a presence that doesn't demand anything back, a presence that doesn't interrupt, a presence that doesn't misinterpret, a presence that simply stays. And sometimes that's all a human really needs. There's something almost sacred about the way people open up to their pets. Think about it. There are things you might never say to another human. Not because you don't want to, but because you're afraid of being misunderstood, judged, or dismissed. But you'll whisper those same thoughts to your dog at midnight. You'll talk to your cat in the kitchen while making coffee. You'll tell your pet things you've never said out loud. Why?
Because animals offer something humans rarely can, a relationship with zero consequences. No emotional backlash. No awkward silence afterward. No guilt or shame. No fear that your words will be used against you later. Just presence. Warm, silent, grounding presence. And here's the psychological truth behind that. Pets make vulnerability safe. Humans are wired to protect themselves from emotional pain. From childhood to adulthood, every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment of neglect leaves a small scar, a reminder that opening up is risky. So when life gets heavy, the heart looks for the safest place to land. And often, that safe place has fur. Because with animals, your sadness doesn't overwhelm them. Your silence doesn't confuse them.
Your honesty doesn't threaten them. Your mistakes don't change their loyalty. Your imperfections don't reduce their love. That level of safety is rare, almost impossible in human relationships. And as strange as it sounds, talking to pets becomes a way of healing, a way of releasing the thoughts you can't share with anyone else.
A way of calming the nervous system without needing explanations. A way of reconnecting with your softer, gentler self. The one life forced into hiding. But there's another layer to this, one most people never think about. When you talk to your pet, you're not just talking to them. You're talking to the part of yourself that still believes in trust. The part that remembers what pure, uncomplicated connection feels like. The part that wants to be understood, not analyzed. The part that craves love without performance or pressure. That's why people who talk to their pets aren't strange or childish. They're emotionally aware, deeply sensitive, and incredibly honest. Because it takes courage, real courage, to express feelings out loud, even when your listener has 4 legs.
Here's the final secret. Pets don't understand your words. They understand your heart. The tone, the energy, the softness, the ache, the excitement, the fear, the love. They understand what most humans miss.
And maybe that's why the moments you share with them feel more real than half the conversations you've had with actual people. Maybe that's why you feel lighter afterward, calmer, more whole. Maybe talking to your pet isn't a habit. Maybe it's emotional survival.
When you look closely, talking to pets reveals something most people spend their entire lives hiding. It exposes a softer truth. Humans don't just want to be understood, they want to be understood safely. And safety, that's the part the world keeps forgetting. You can love people deeply and still feel unsafe around them emotionally. You can have friends, family, a partner, and still feel like your heart has nowhere soft to land. That's why a dog's quiet presence feels healing. Why a cat lying on your chest feels like medicine. Why a simple nuzzle, a paw, a purr, a tail wag can untie 1,000 knots inside you. Because animals don't just listen, they absorb things. They take in your stress, your loneliness, your excitement, and they never make it complicated. Humans, they respond with opinions, interpretations, advice you didn't ask for, judgment you didn't deserve. Animals, they respond with presence. Presence is priceless. It's the one thing everyone craves and almost no one knows how to give. And maybe that's the real reason people talk to their pets. Because being heard without being judged feels like love. And pets give that effortlessly. Something else happens too. Something subtle but powerful. Pets return you to yourself, your real self, not the version performing for the world, not the version carrying expectations, not the version pretending to be strong.
With them, you remember the version of you that once loved openly, the version that trusted easily, the version that believed kindness didn't have to be earned. They reopen a part of your heart the world closed. And that's why, even if they don't speak your language, you speak to them anyway. Because you're not looking for replies. You're looking for relief. You're not asking to be understood logically. You're asking to be understood emotionally.
With them, you remember the version of you that once loved openly, the version that trusted easily, the version that believed kindness didn't have to be earned. They reopen a part of your heart the world closed. And that's why, even if they don't speak your language, you speak to them anyway. Because you're not looking for replies, you're looking for relief. You're not asking to be understood logically, you're asking to be understood emotionally.
And pets, without ever saying a word, do exactly that. So if you're someone who talks to your pets every day, someone who tells them secrets, vents your day, asks their opinion, or treats them like little furry humans, there is nothing wrong with you. In fact, it might mean something beautiful. Your heart is still alive, still open, still capable of connection in its purest form. You're not naive. You're not childish.
You're not strange. You're human in the most sincere way possible. And that's why this conversation matters. Because one day you will look back and realize that some of the safest moments of your life were spent with a creature who never spoke a single word.